Welcome into the Detroit Lions Dynasty review, looking at the Lions from 2023 and beyond. Brian, if you were a Lions fan, I know our dad is, but if you were a Lions fan, would you be able to watch the Super Bowl today? Because they should be in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the last game of the season. Like, I get the bitterness and stuff like that, but I definitely come from a different school of thought. Like, I picked my team because they were bad all those years ago, and obviously I got the benefit of the Super Bowl a few years ago. But yeah, I know it's definitely tough. Like, you would at least like to see them make it there, like whether or not they win it. It's like, I mean, I guess, like, what's more disappointing? It's like not winning the conference or making it to the Super Bowl and then losing there. Like,
Yeah, it's the age-old question, right? I think I'd still want them to make it to the Super Bowl, just because you get that 2 weeks of like everyone talking about them, and it's just fun,
right.
Like it's just super fun. Like my team's in the Super Bowl, like 2 weeks of coverage, and like it's just a lot of fun. So I think I would still take the loss, make it to the Super Bowl, even if I knew they were going to lose, type of thing. So
What if it was one of those blowout, like Seattle, Denver Super Bowls? Like, what if that was the situation also? So like by the end of halfway through the second quarter, you're just like, oh my God, like I can't even watch the rest of this. I remember watching that with my brother-in-law, who's a Broncos fan. And it was just like, man, this is brutal.
I think I stopped watching that game after halftime, or like there was a kickoff. The Seahawks returned a kick to start the second half, and I stopped watching after that because at that point it was already like very slim. The Broncos were going to come back. So actually, and I'll answer your question. I did see something funny on that. Like someone put like a ridiculous amount of money on no safeties in that game. In the first play of the game was a safety over Peyton Manning's head. It was like, dude, I think he put like a couple $100,000 on it. Like, it's like, what is the point of that? Like, what is the payout? Like, how much are you even making? Because it has to be pretty, that has to be pretty heavily favored, right? No safeties.
Yeah. I think with bets like that, it's like, I think the idea is like you win some money to pay for all your other bets so you can make the bigger parlays and they're basically free kind of thing, but yeah, no, that's I'm more the go big or go home kind of thing. Like I'd rather do like a 4-team parlay than bet on individual, but I'm kind of coming around to like, just pick two, like parlay 2 bets together, like on the week or something, and then kind of go from there. But I get it, but I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, but yeah, to answer your question, I'd still take it. Like even if it was a blowout, it sucks. But like that again, that whole 2 weeks of just like like you could. I know from where Dad's coming from. Like I probably wouldn't even been able to like watch Sports Talk, Sports Center, all that stuff like for the last 2 weeks because it just hurts. So, but like. I know a lot of people say, oh, they'll be back. They were back. You do never know. Dan Campbell kind of said that. Like, you just never know, especially, can they get back to the NFC Championship game? Sure. Can they be up, 24/7, on the road in San Francisco, with 2 quarters to play? Like, probably not. So, right. Exciting times for the Lions fans for sure. Dan Campbell, obviously the head coach, made it to the NFC Championship game. They have a lot of cap space, almost $50 million, which is 8th most. So they're going to be spending some money for sure. They got 7 draft picks, including 4 in the top 100, which is good. They got the Vikings 3rd round pick, I believe, when they traded Hawkinson. So, a first, a second, and 2/3 is good, and they've been really good at drafting lately. No one really significant to talk about in terms of free agents. They have a decent amount, but Teddy Bridgewater's retiring. Craig Reynolds was RB3, never really used except for that one touchdown he had in like the playoff game, which was random. Josh Reynolds maybe is the biggest one to talk about, but even he's kind of a fringe roster clogger type of player for Dynasty. So we'll just jump in with Jared Goff. awesome year for Jared Goff. He finished as the QB7. He averaged, almost 18 points a game, just under, which is pretty solid. It's probably closer to, I'm guessing more closer to like a top 10 guy than a top 7 guy. But he was really good at home again. He obviously has his offensive coordinators coming back, which I think is huge. Ben Johnson, huge for this whole team, especially Jared Goff. Jared Goff, are you completely comfortable with him as your QB2 heading into 2024?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've always kind of liked Jared Goff. Like he was good on the Rams. Obviously, made it to the Super Bowl with them, but they lost that. I'm pretty sure, right? Like that was when they saw Todd Gurley and stuff like that. I've always kind of liked him in general. I don't think he's like the best quarterback, but he's definitely like no one's arguing that, like they're just like he's more than competent for sure. Like he can run a team, he can run an offense. Like you're not losing because of Jared Goff. So I think I think he's only gone up this year because of how well the Lions played just in general. Like he was kind of one of those guys where it's like if they were bad, like where would he have ended up? It's like would they have kept him, kind of a thing? Would they have like it just like so much speculation that we don't really have to talk about too much. But I like Goff. He's not even 30 years old yet, and he's obviously on a team that's like trending in completely the right direction. So yeah, very, very solid QB2. But, yeah.
No, I agree. And I agree that even if they made the playoffs, like if they just like tanked in the playoffs and Goff looked bad, they would have potentially thought about moving on from him. But he actually played really well in the playoff game. So I think they're very comfortable. Probably going to give him a contract extension. He's just a solid QB2 for sure. Teddy Bridgewater is retiring. Hendon Hooker, who we knew was going to basically start the year like on PUP because he had a ACL injury very late. I liked his tape coming out of college. One of the knocks on him was he's old. He's already 26 years old, and he's just finished his rookie year. So that is a knock on him for sure. I think he's interesting. He's intriguing. Unfortunately, again, Jared Goff's going to be getting a contract, but this is one of the teams where you just kind of want their backup quarterback because of the system. Miami's like that. San Francisco's like that. The Rams are probably like that, and so are the Lions. So I definitely think he's a hold for now. As hard as it is to hold guys like him, definitely think you should be holding him because something happens to Goff. He can run, Hendon Hooker can, and he has a big arm, so he could be a solid fantasy player for sure.
Plus his jersey is perfect.
Yeah. Right. I was trying to look up. Okay. Yeah. So he's 6'3", 220. So I thought he was a little bit smaller, but I just think he's really good. Just go watch his tape at Tennessee, and you will enjoy that for sure. The running backs, this team, we kind of talked about it, like, especially with Montgomery just coming into the year, like how undervalued he was. It was nothing really against Gibbs. It was more just about like, dude, Montgomery is essentially going to be like Jamal Williams, but better this year. So, and he kind of was like that. He finishes RB13, even though he missed 3 games, averaged 14.2 points a game. I think he had like close to 15 touchdowns, 1,000 yards. 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns. Didn't really catch the ball as much as he did with Chicago, but that's fine. So, and then Jahmyr Gibbs, both those guys, top 15 running backs, a good chance, like in terms of where they finish next year, or do you think they can't really repeat it, or do you think they go more in the favor of Jahmyr Gibbs, giving him like the workload?
No, I don't think that necessarily happens. Like I think we'll see something similar as to what we saw this year. Obviously, they're definitely not afraid to use both of them. And I think once we started to see Jahmyr Gibbs actually on the field, it was kind of like, man, they need to get that dude the ball more because he just looked so explosive. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he had the big opportunity in the passing game, which is kind of what we expected, given how he played in college and his usage. Which he wasn't crazy used, but obviously a lot better than most teams for sure. I think he's a pretty exciting player, just to watch him, I think that's pretty, I'm not really saying anything nobody knows, but yeah, no, definitely he's going to have a lot of opportunity. I think both of these guys can finish in the top 15, just in different ways, so let's see, Montgomery's definitely a little bit more of the concerning one because it was so much based on touchdowns, that is, that's got to be what, over 35, maybe 40% of his production was through. So I'm seeing 13 touchdowns, just real quick. That's about 80 points out of 200. So yeah, that's 40%. So that's concerning, but it is the Lions, and we saw who had a lot of the goal line work. But between him and Gibbs, 23 rushing touchdowns, it's I think that's repeatable for sure. Like you said about Jamal Williams last 2022 season.
Yeah, that's what makes it less concerning, as we just saw it 2 years in a row now.
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting to see if they do give Gibbs more and if that's a good thing for him or not. Is it a Tony Pollard situation where he gets more and becomes less efficient? The thing about this team, though, is that they want to run the ball, want to run it up the middle and grind it out. And that's kind of suits Montgomery a little bit more. And, even in the playoffs, they weren't going away from Montgomery necessarily. So, the first two playoff games, I see Gibbs at 34 and 36% of the snaps, 54 in the San Francisco game, which a lot of it could have been at the end of the game, playing catch up. So, they were kind of showing what they wanted to do. So I think both of them top 15. Gibbs, it will be exciting though if they do give him a full workload. Could he be, Chris Johnson, which if you played fantasy in the early 2010s, the dude was 2,000-yard season, and he was very much like Jahmyr Gibbs, very small, very fast, could catch the ball. No one thought he could, take on a full workload. He was under 200 pounds, and he did. And he was just a monster for fantasy for 5 years. So, we definitely see the talent when he gets the ball.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's kind of interesting to look at, if you actually look at their breakdowns, just their raw numbers and stuff, they had very similar amount of opportunities right around 250. Only a couple of opportunities difference. Obviously Gibbs much more in the passing game, Montgomery much more on the ground, kind of a thing. But even their yardage totals, Gibbs definitely had the edge there, but only by about 100 yards. So which isn't nothing to sneeze at, but it's just 11 touchdowns for Gibbs total and Montgomery 13. So it's they're very, very close for sure.
Yeah. And then there's probably value in the RB3, maybe in a deeper league. We just don't know who that is going to be at this point. But we see, I don't know. Although I do say that, and when Montgomery was hurt, I think Mick Gibbs missed a game or two as well. When they were hurt, though, they kind of just went with, especially when it was Montgomery, they kind of just went with Gibbs for the most part. I see 87% and 70%. I think those are a couple games that Montgomery missed. So I don't know. Maybe the RB3, but that's kind of a tough ask to hold there. Amon-Ra St. Brown is awesome. I think he's probably the wide receiver 4 in Dynasty. I don't quite put him in the tier. I know how Keep Trade Cut has it. To me, it's not that it really matters, but Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and Jamar Chase are in tier one. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is in like the top of tier 2. So I just think you can make an argument for who's the wide receiver 1 out of those 3. I don't think you can really make an argument for Amon-Ra St. Brown over all 3 of them or even any one of them. But he's awesome. He's improved every year. He's almost uncoverable. And we're just seeing huge numbers from him, 1,500 yards and 120 catches, had 10 touchdowns. That was kind of a knock on him a little bit. It's like, can he get to the touchdowns? It's going to cap him from being a top 5 receiver or wide receiver 1 overall. It's like, well, he just finished as wide receiver 3, averaged 17 points a game in half PPR. So could he be wide receiver 1? I think he proved that he can.
Yes.
So he's pretty awesome. I don't know if there's what else to say about him.
No, yeah. I mean, I know, in his rookie year, he really had that breakout, towards the end, and it was end of the season. And it was kind of like, well, where the hell did this guy come from? And then it was like, is that actually what we're going to see the following year? And obviously in 2022, he proved it basically again. He didn't have quite the year that he just had, but that's what you want to see. You want to see that improvement, very, very heavy target share, especially Goff threw 600 passes this season, and he had Amon-Ra St. Brown had 164 targets. It's like that's just crazy numbers. It's just ridiculous. The dude is a bona fide stud. He's a big reason why this team is as good as it is. He's not the only reason, they have a lot of very interesting players, but he's the man. And I think wide receiver 4, I'm just looking at who below him would I put above him. It's not putting Puka or Garrett Wilson or even AJ Brown. AJ Brown's more of a, just because of he's Amon-Ra St. Brown's a couple years younger. That's the only edge that I give him over Brown, but it's no, he's just done it. He's shown the improvement. He's on a great team, and he's going to be great for years to come. Yeah, I actually made a tier list video yesterday and didn't release it yet, but of wide receivers, and my tier 2 was 3 players as well. It was St. Brown, AJ Brown, and Puka. So, if you want to argue AJ Brown, I think there's potentially an argument for AJ Brown over Amon-Ra St. Brown, just because we've seen 2 really good seasons from AJ Brown now, and AJ Brown is on the verge of being, in my opinion, in tier 1 if he kept up what he did the entire season, didn't tank the last 7 weeks. But we thought, something good. Not that we're talking about AJ Brown, but he did. You've seen him do it with 2 different quarterbacks and 2 different systems, which I think is always, a good thing as well. So right.
But I wouldn't be, if Hendon Hooker has to come in for Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown's still going to be a monster. He's just one of those players. So Jameson Williams, going kind of referencing that tier list video that I made. I forget what tier I had him in. I think I had him in a tier 6, but there was a group of guys where I was just like, okay, these are young guys that have high draft capital and have shown at least something, whether it's a couple plays or a couple games worth of stuff. Basically it was Jameson Williams, Christian Watson, and Jahan Dotson. Those 3 guys kind of in the same boat. Good draft capital. They've shown something, but they have been disappointments the first 2 years. So he's kind of there. He's shown something. The team's starting to trust him more. I'm still, I'm not gonna send a first round pick for him or anything like that, or I'm not gonna trade him away for, a late second or anything either. Although some people might. So I think I'd trade maybe a late second, a pretty late second for him still. I think there's still hope. And I'm excited to see a little bit, again, we knew his first year was kind of a wash because he was coming off a torn ACL that he got in the college championship game, which is played, January 8th. And then this year he got hurt in training camp and they had the suspension. So he like didn't practice and then he was suspended. So like, he just didn't kind of get it going again. So I think you can point to a couple things like you can with Christian Watson and Treylon Burks. They're all in that same boat. A similar boat, I should say. So where are you at with Jameson Williams, who's currently wide receiver 38? And looks like you can get him for I'll check on the picks here, but go ahead and tell me how you feel about Jameson Williams.
Yeah, it's kind of tough with him. Like, I think honestly, if he was on a lot of other teams, we wouldn't be as excited about him. Obviously, like you mentioned, like the injury was kind of like what happened before his rookie year. And I know there was a lot of talk where it's like, dude, if that didn't happen, he would have been the wide receiver 1 in that draft class. Like, which, I mean, you could speak to that more than I could because I don't watch a lot of college football. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's with the emergence of, the 2 rookies this year with Gibbs and Laporta, and obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown, like really just like becoming the dude. Like it's kind of like, well, where does Jameson Williams fit in? I know he's a completely different player than those guys, but I'm a little concerned with it. So yeah, I don't know. Did you find out what pick you have to trade for him or?
Not yet. I was trying to decide on who to keep, trade, and cut while you're talking.
But yeah.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead. You're good. I haven't found it yet.
I don't think I'm like trading a late second for him, which according to this, like it says that won't even get it done. So I think
205 is what it's saying, a fair trade. So
yeah, I think I'm out at that price. Like I think I'd rather just roll it again, the re-roll, like you like to say. But I don't know. I could be very short-sighted, and I could be eating crow in about 12 months for sure.
Yeah, again, it's just a team like the Lions and a guy like Dan Campbell. It's like you need to earn our trust type of thing. And again, like it is funny how people knew he was basically his rookie year was a wash, and then overreacted to like, holy crap, he did nothing his rookie year. It's just like, well, you can't have both. Like you can't have both of those. And then the suspension really hurt. It got reduced to 4 games. But again, he missed all of training camp with an injury, then got suspended where he wasn't even able to practice with the team during the suspension. So like you're just coming in week 5, like with this team that's already established. Like I just think, it's a pretty complex system as well. So I think there's a lot more things you can point to with him than a guy like, like a Christian Watson, for example, where it's just strictly injury based. So I'm still hopeful. I agree. It's kind of a crowded situation, but he's probably going to need at least this next year to have like a George Pickens like season. That's kind of where I see him. He's not going to get 100 catches, with St. Brown and Laporta and Gibbs there, but he could be Pickens, 60, 70 catches, 1,100 yards, and touchdowns. We'll see. So which is useful, and his value will go up from there, right?
Yeah, for sure. It would, but I think, like it's kind of like almost like a Gabe Davis-esque question, kind of, right? Like, I don't know, like you said, like he's definitely, I don't think he's getting 100 targets next year, given all those 3 dudes that are in front of him. So it's just kind of like, it's definitely a prove it year, but I think if I could get the 205, like I'm trading him. If I could get, honestly, the 210 or something like that, I think I'm just trading him at this point.
210.
Yeah, I think I'm just out, kind of.
I mean, what are we talking about? 210, we're talking about a wide receiver drafted in the 3rd round, or like a running back or something like that. I don't know. I think I understand it, but I also think I'll take the chance. I'll take the chance that this guy who was drafted like top 10 or top 12 or whatever he was, like that he still has something. And George Pickens was definitely his type of season was definitely a step above anything Gabe Davis has ever done. We're talking about 300 to 500 more yards per season and things like that. So I could see 100 targets. Like if Goff throws it 600 times, right? You assume Amon-Ra is going to get 28% of that. So we'll just say like 160 targets. Laporta gets another 100, 120 or something. So let's just say between Laporta and St. Brown, they get 300. They get half the targets, right?
Yeah.
Like Gibbs probably gets 60, 70, right? There's still what are we looking at? Still 240, 215, 220 targets to go around. Like, I don't know. I could see him getting 100 of those. Like, just given where this, like, who else is going to get? Though obviously you got another tight end or a couple running backs here and there, but so and 100 targets isn't like, holy crap, he's going to be amazing. Again, I'm just looking at George Pickens, 106 targets, 63 catches, 1,150 yards, 5 touchdowns. And is that amazing? No, but it's something. And it's probably better than what you're going to get from the 210 or something, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. It's all fair points. I was just trying to look up. I was like, I wonder if you could bet on that already, because you can bet on anything, like, and you bet on, will Jameson Williams get 100 targets next year? Like, probably. But no, yeah, fair points for sure. You just got to decide on where you're at with him. The listener.
I mean, so let's see. I know we're talking a lot about him, but I think it's
I think he's
one to talk about.
Yeah, he's one of the more. Yeah, like he's definitely the guy who's in the most gray area, and as far as like the 4 main dudes that we're talking about,
Yeah, I mean he was, if you extrapolate his numbers, he was on pace for about, I think, 65 targets this year, and in the very beginning, where he wasn't starting in the beginning. So if you kind of look at where he started playing a significant amount of the snaps. Or being a starter, essentially, he was averaging 3.6 targets a game. So we're looking at about 60 targets for this last year. So I could see it bump up 20, 25, 30, even getting close to, almost to 100. So, we saw in that playoff game, they gave him that end around and he took it to the house. That 42-yard run, like, you see his potential, right? Like, with the ball in his hands, the dude could be pretty explosive. So I just think there's still some optimism. Like, I'd take him over Christian Watson. I know maybe that's a little controversial, but I'd take him over guys like, obviously, Treylon Burks for sure and stuff like that, but I'd also take him over Christian Watson and potentially Jahan Dotson. I don't know about that one yet, though.
Yeah. I think those are all fair enough points. Like, I think those guys should be kind of sort of in that same category for sure. Like, I wouldn't say like, oh, definitely Jameson over Watson or definitely the other way around, but it's fair enough.
No one else to talk about here. Josh Reynolds is free agent. He was kind of like a fringe guy. I always liked Josh Reynolds, but like in deeper, like desperation stuff and kind of, damn, if you just caught one of those drops, you probably would have won the game. Khalif Raymond, Donovan Peoples-Jones is free agent, so no one to talk about here. They could bring someone else in too. That's actually going to be pretty telling as well, in my opinion. Something I was thinking about yesterday that I wanted to talk about, or a couple of days ago. If they don't bring someone in because they have a good cap space, or draft someone in the first 3 rounds, with their first 4 picks in terms of a weapon, I think that's pretty telling about how they feel about Jameson Williams, right?
Yeah, so that's fair enough. I do agree with that. I was kind of thinking that too as we were like going through this a little bit. Like, yeah, if they don't bring someone in, that means they have plans for him to get him more involved, which I don't doubt that they would. He was very high draft capital player, 2 years ago. So it's like, I don't know. Is he just toast? I don't think so, because he hasn't really gotten the opportunity yet. But yeah, I think that's a good thing to be looking out for. If they don't draft someone, don't even wait until past day 2. If they don't draft anyone in the first 2 days of the NFL draft, like maybe try and acquire him at that point as like a bit of a sleeper.
Yeah. Or free agency as well. So now if they do, well, you might be holding the bag on him. So and then Sam Laporta is the tight end 1 according to Keep Trade Cut. I'm on record of saying I think I'd rather have Trey McBride. Doesn't really matter though. So I don't. Again, there's not much to talk about here. The dude had maybe the most impressive rookie season for a tight end ever. I know people talk about Mike Ditka all the time. It's like, dude, that was in like 1950, like, like 1961. It's like the NFL was so different. I know you can make an argument. It's like, oh, it's even more impressive. It's like, yeah, but did they even know how to cover people at that point? Like, so. Yeah, like the only other guy to really look towards too is Kyle Pitts, who had more yards, but obviously Laporta had 10 touchdowns. I do think it's slightly overrated. Like he's going to be, and I'm thinking about like redraft. He's going to be overdrafted in my opinion. Like we saw a really good season from him, and obviously he was a rookie, and he can probably get better. But it wasn't. Again, I just mentioned it. It was the worst rookie tight end 1 points per game season since 2016. It was 11.5 points. It wasn't like Kelsey 15 plus or Mark Andrews 15 plus points. So just a little thing to mention there, but go ahead and talk about Laporta if you want.
Yeah, I agree. Like I think he's being like overvalued, not by like a ton. Like I definitely think, he's a good player and everything like that. But I mean, Kelsey did still outscore him on a per game basis, not that that's like, like a huge thing, but yeah, I don't know. I think, like him being in that top upper echelon, like, I think that's, that's fine, whatever. Like, I don't think he's all alone up there. I think there's a couple of guys that I wouldn't mind tearing down to and then but you have to get something good though. Like if you're going back down to, let's say Mark Andrews, like, I don't even know what I'd want on top of it. Probably, I don't know. Can you get a first and Mark Andrews for
a heartbeat if I could?
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Might be able to though. Someone might they see tight end 1, they love Laporta, so
that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like, if I could, I'm trying to put it in the calculator right now. Like, does that make sense? Yeah, it says you can get basically the 112 and Mark Andrews for Laporta, and that's even. I mean, I don't know. Prod, like Mark Andrews, like I think he's kind of forgotten a lot this year, and we haven't talked about the Ravens yet. So, right? We didn't talk about them.
No.
Okay.
They're, up next.
Yeah, no, I would do that in a heartbeat, because Mark Andrews, I'm just looking at his. It's like, okay, tight end 13. I'm trying to do like mental math here. About 10 half PPR points per game Andrews did. And it's like, we've seen the track record and everything like that. So yeah, I would totally do that. I'd be fine. Like, I think a guy like Laporta is, you can like, obviously he'll never get higher, right? I mean, that doesn't mean he won't be the tight end 1, and that doesn't mean necessarily you should sell him,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, he was definitely a steal where you got him in the draft. And if you want to just ride that out, then by all means, like, I'm not telling you have to sell him, but I think you should consider it if you have him and if you have other needs on your team, because you might be able to fill 2 needs with 1 guy.
Would we be talking so excited about Sam Laporta if he had 5 touchdowns this year?
No.
Rather than 10.
Definitely.
That's kind of my point.
Yeah, so. Definitely not, because, I mean, a quarter, or no, is it a quarter or like a third? About a third of his points, basically, maybe, somewhere in between there, came on the backs of touchdowns. I mean, obviously, we don't know if that's a trend yet, because the dude's a rookie. They obviously, like, he's a very good player for sure. Like, he can, like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's too much more to say. Like, but no, we definitely wouldn't. But I mean, 900 yards. He was, and 10 touchdowns is awesome. And what they say about the tight ends, it's like if you want them to be the number 1 or number 2 target getter on the team to be a difference maker, and he was the number 2, obviously, like without any competition really. Like there's no way he's ever going to be the number 1 with ARSB there, but I think could he be the number 2 going forward? Easily. So there you have it.
And he did show out in the 2 playoff games. The first one, he was coming back from that knee injury. Didn't even think he was going to play. But the next 2 games, 11 targets, 9 catches, 65 yards, 13 targets, 9 catches, 97 yards. So he's obviously a really good player. But, yeah I'm probably tearing off if I can.
Yeah, and they schemed him from the very beginning. Like he was very involved from week 1. Like he's playing, 80+% of the snaps most weeks. Only see a couple of 70s and below there. And it's just like, 5, 6, 11, 5, those are his target numbers in the first 4 weeks. And it doesn't drop off from there. So he was obviously, they got him on purpose to use him to use him how they used him. Like it wasn't like a thing he fell into, or it's like, oh, this guy actually is good. Like he was planned, by Dan Campbell and the rest of the coaching staff there, which is great.
Yep. Still think Trey McBride's gonna be better, but we'll see. But we're gonna wrap it up there. I think they just missed being the number 1 longest video. I think the Titans still have them by about a minute. So we'll be back with the Ravens. We're down to the last 3. You got the Ravens and then the 2 Super Bowl teams, Niners and Chiefs. So we will be back then, and we will catch you guys then.